Hey guys, it's been a long time. I was just happening to be browsing YouTube and came across Kitco News, and lo and behold, who's up there but Jim Rodgers. Now, I don't know if I think I've talked about Jim before. Um, if you guys don't know me, he's an old guy now. He's like 81, and they have his net worth at 300 million. His personal holdings are private, so I don't really know how they know exactly how much he has. Smart guy. I mean, he acts like he's just an average Joe, but this guy went to Yale, Kume Laude from Yale. I don't even know what that is. First, second, I don't know. But it's pretty damn good. And I don't like George Soros personally, but him and Soros made this quantum fund from 73 to 80, and their portfolio gained 4,200%, while the S&P advanced 47%. He made so much damn money, he retired at age 37, and then he just rode a motorcycle around the world. From 90 to 92, he traveled through China, around the world, a motorcycle, crossing 6 continents. Between 99 and 2002, went through 116 countries. This is a really smart dude, you know, like whenever he speaks, like, I try to listen to him, because even though I don't agree with necessarily everything, like down here it says like he thinks we should all invest in farms. He says stockbrokers are going to be driving taxis, and the smart ones will learn to drive tractors so they can work for the smart farmers. The farmers are going to be driving Lamborghinis. But I mean, this was an old quote. This was back in 2010. He said, kind of stay away from Wall Street and the financial, and go to commodities, raw materials, and natural resources. In this interview, I listened to a little bit of it. I haven't listened to all of it, but he doesn't answer a lot of questions directly. He kind of flips it back to her, you know. Tell me what you want, what you know, watch Kitco News. But he does mention that silver's been down 60% from its all-time high. He does mention he's holding a lot of U.S. Cash and or, you know, U.S. Probably treasuries, I would assume, and also some gold and silver. It's funny, he refers to himself as an old peasant. I wish I had the
Has a lot of debt, so it's got to be bad.
So, you know, he always talks about you know, all the other governments and around the world are got a lot of debt. she started out saying, Bank of America, J.P. Morgan, all these, have a positive outlook. There's going to be a soft landing. There's going to be no recession. And, Jim's first reply was, well, if everybody says there's not going to be a recession, there's definitely going to be a recession. And I tend to agree with him. All the countries around the world are over in debt. And there's no end in sight. There's 60 elections happening across the world this year. And what happens in election years, the people that are in power try to make everybody happy. So how do you make people happy? You spend money, you borrow money. Jim mentions that Japan is like a printing press right now. They're printing so much damn money, it's crazy. But, they were talked about a little bit. We got 2 wars going on. We got the Ukraine and Russia war. We got Israel and Hamas fighting. And now it's spilling over to the Iran-backed Houthis. And now we got 3 U.S. servicemen killed. And I don't think Biden has the guts to necessarily go into Iran, but I think they will attack the Iran-backed Houthis. I don't know why Biden lifted all the sanctions on Iran that basically crippled their economy, and now that the sanctions are lifted, they have tens of billions of dollars to give to these other terrorist organizations that basically just want to destroy America. Doesn't matter if you're nice to them, doesn't matter if you're friendly to them, they still want to kill you. Not everybody, but the radical ones that unfortunately take things to the extreme. We got this guy here, Jamie Dimon, who thinks that it's going to be 10 years before we see a crash, and Jim Rodgers said, maybe this year, might be next year, definitely in the next 5 years, we're probably going to see probably the biggest financial crash in history. We keep kicking things down the road. Another thing he mentioned is, as of late, the FANG stocks per se, the Facebook and Amazon and Google, Microsoft, all these, have been going up, and he basically says that in any crash or correction, those would be the ones that he would be shorting. Now, this is an older article. This is like from August 2nd. But it kind of mentions it. He said he's not shorting them yet, but and he also talked about interest rates. If the U.S. starts lowering the interest rates, the stock market will fall. Maybe I misquoted him on that, because I would think the opposite would be true. But this just talks about he has $300 million bucks, moved to Singapore. Like, I disagree with him, like as far as like he wanted, he says like move to Asia and the smart people, and which a long time ago went to London, and then the smart kids went to the U.S., and then now he says all the smart kids are in Asia. You know, I personally don't think everyone thinks China's going to overtake the U.S. and stuff. I just don't see that happening. And there's many reasons for that. I think one reason I've talked about this before, is the U.S. basically went through a transition where everyone was a farmer, and you could be the best farmer in the world or the worst farmer in the world, and the pay difference between the best farmer and the worst farmer was probably a couple bucks, maybe not even that much. And you know, and then we went to a manufacturing economy, and which favored men, and then we had the women get involved in the workforce, which made us very profitable, made us very wealthy, because instead of one person working and you're relying on one person basically to do everything for the family, money wise, and the wife just raise kids, and you know, I'm not saying just raising kids is not a job, because I know it is, and a lot of women probably work 4 or 5 jobs. You know, they clean the house, they cook the food, they you know, love and support and nurture their husband and their children, and maybe they're growing a garden in the backyard, or feeding the animals, or you know, doing stuff at church or whatever. So I'm nothing against women. I'm just saying that I believe in America it hurt the family structure, because a lot of women today say, you know, hey, I don't even need a man. I don't need a husband. You know, I can make my own money. I can support my own family. You know, I don't need anything. But well, I'm sure I'm going to get in trouble for saying all this stuff. But it was good for the U.S. financially, but it was bad for the morality of the U.S. I mean, you know, a long time ago, if everyone was a farmer, you know, you married the you know, maybe 30 miles away there was another farm, and they had, you know, 3 daughters, and they knew your family, and you married that daughter, and you didn't have any temptation because there was nobody else around, and the nearest guy was you know, 100 miles away, and there was no temptation, there was no, you know, Facebook, there was no dating apps, you know, there was no any of this stuff. And then people, you know, and a lot of people stayed married and raised a family. But then when you have two people working, you know, maybe there's a cute co-worker at work, or, you know, there's just a lot more temptation. I wouldn't say temptation, but a lot more people attacking your marriage or your relationship in today's society than was back then. And back then, you know, there was probably more religious pressure, and if you did something wrong, I mean, the whole town might shun you, and you may not have, anyone to talk to or socialize with. Now we live in a society where, 50% of the marriages and the divorce, there's a lot of broken homes, broken families. Even Mr. Jim Rodgers here has not been so successful when it comes to marriage. I mean, he's been married 3 times. He married in '66. And they divorced in '69. I mean, good Lord, that was only 3 years. And then he married again in '74, and then divorced in '77. That was another 3 years. And then the next one he married 2000, and this says they got 2 daughters. That's all it says. I guess maybe they're still married now. I guess hey, we just had 2 kids, and maybe we just live our separate lives. But not all the financial geniuses, do you want to take relationship advice from. As you all know, Warren Buffett, his wife basically left him, and she had a friend that he didn't know how to cook. So he probably didn't know how to tie a shoe. And he was good in financial matters, but as far as being competent in everyday activities, such as making tea or something, he has no idea how to do it. And so his wife left and went to California or somewhere, and left him in Omaha, Nebraska, and that lady basically took care of him, and then eventually, I guess I don't know if they ever got married or not. I guess they did, but as tight as Warren is on money, he probably didn't give her much. But these were just some predictions he had done. I never finished what I was talking about. But when I was talking about China and the U.S., but basically the U.S. transitioned from a manufacturing economy that focused on men, and men did well in that environment. And now we're in a service economy where 70% of the economy is service-based. And that favors women. Communication, talking on the phone, customer service, all this kind of thing. Favors women. And now, you got a lot of women that make a lot more money than men, and a lot of women say, hey, I don't even need a man, thanks for your sperm, but, I don't need you. And, but anyway, China is still in the manufacturing phase. And the manufacturing industry in general is a dying industry, because the technology, whether it be computers, whether it be machine learning, whether it be robots, the productivity, maybe it's just, the way they position things in the plant. People are getting smarter, and there's all these, ergodynamic things where they study injuries and repetitive motion, and all that. If you're on a conveyor belt 12 hours a day, 60 hours a week, and you come up with better solutions to how you can run more efficiently and increase productivity. So anyway, the productivity or whether it be robotics or whatever, goes up about 8%. They get 8% more efficient every year, whereas the demand only goes up maybe 2%. So they're basically, they don't need 6% of the workforce every year, because every year they are getting more and more efficient, more and more productive with less people. Maybe this new machine replaces 10 workers, or something, or maybe all you gotta do now is push a button instead of having to manually pick stuff out of a bin. Maybe a robot can do that, and all you do is push a button. But anyway, China's still stuck in this manufacturing economy, and they have not made the transition to a service-based economy. And not only that, but they had this, I don't know if it was 50 years or whatever, where they had one-child policy. And they basically got rid of all the women, and now they got 50 million men or so that have nobody to marry, because they either killed or got rid of the women, because they wanted the men to carry on the family name. So in order for China to overtake the U.S., in my opinion, they'd have to transition into a service-based economy. And with a lack of women, and even today, even when they have long passed the one-child policy, they're still at a negative reproductive rate. I mean, Japan, half the population are virgins. I just don't see it happening, and I believe that the U.S. has been blessed because they're a Christian nation, they're a godly nation. Not everybody is a Christian, not everyone does the right thing, but all in all, there are some good people in this country, and I'm sure there's some good people in China as well, but China is a communist country. And anytime you have a dictator that locks you up for offering an opinion, I don't believe that there's any Christian or godliness in not going to be blessed by God. So I'm not saying good things can't come from China. I just don't see China overtaking the U.S. Ever, probably. Since 2008, the debt everywhere has skyrocketed, gigantic increases in debt. So I think the simple statement, next bear market will be the worst in my lifetime, because the debt has. And this is it's true. And I think I misquoted him earlier because, I mean, if interest rates go up, the stock market should go down. But if interest rates go down, the stock market should go up, in my opinion. And maybe I misquoted him on that. But here again, he's talking about agriculture has been a disaster for years, and usually if you buy a disaster, things turn out okay. So, again, you know, like I said, one of the things I got from half of the interview that I watched was talked about silver.
Right now.
Well, at the moment, I have a lot of cash, and the cash is in U.S. dollars mainly. I have other currencies, but mainly U.S. dollars, because, you know, everybody, I mean, the U.S. dollar is not a sound currency anymore. We're the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. But everybody thinks it's a sound currency, and they think it's a safe haven. So when problems come, people race to a safe haven. They think it'll be the U.S. dollar. I would suspect the U.S. dollar will go up, will get overpriced. I hope, if it happens that way, that I'm smart enough to sell it. Your question should now be, Michelle, but where will you put the money? And I don't know. I don't know what currency is going to compete with the U.S. dollar in the future. Obviously, logically, it should be the Chinese renminbi, but the renminbi is a blocked currency. You cannot have a blocked currency as the world's major currency. So I don't know. I'm looking.
In terms of currency, what about gold?
Well, I own gold. I own silver. I have for many years. I've never sold any gold or silver. Don't plan to. I hope that my children have my gold and silver someday. But yes, historically, gold and silver have been refuges in times of problems. And I'm an old peasant, Michelle. Us old peasants want to have some gold in the closet and some silver under the bed.
There you go.
But, yeah, you know, look under my bed. You'll find some silver. Look in my closet. You'll find some gold. I'm an old peasant. And we know, us peasants know how to protect ourselves.
They always have some physical gold and silver in the grab-and-go bag. But, Jim, are you adding to those gold and silver positions at the moment?
I haven't added recently, but if and when they go down a lot, I hope I'm smart enough to buy more. If I were buying one right now, and I'm not, it would be silver, because silver is down 60% from its all-time high. Gold is at an all-time high. So on a historic basis anyway, silver's cheap.
Right.
Maybe I'll buy some tomorrow. I mean, who knows?
But I agree with him that silver is cheap. To me, the price of gold should be $1,300, and it's $2,000 right now. So to me, gold is overvalued, overpriced. Like Buffett said, you know, you can look at it and, you know, but it doesn't produce anything. It's not like a farm that grows something. You know, it doesn't produce anything. You know, you're just thinking some other sucker's going to pay more for it in the future than you. But you know, I mentioned this before, like, and maybe we're still a long ways away from it, but one asteroid, you know, there's millions and millions of planets in the world and the universe, and one little asteroid, you know, circling the U.S. or every 20 years or so, we could grab it and capture it and mine it. I mean, there's more gold and silver in that one little asteroid that is known to Earth. So you know, I would caution a little bit, because whenever that happens, that would obviously crash the price of gold and silver if the availability of it was doubled. And whoever probably does that will probably not be so stupid as to, drop it all on the same year. They would, if you had all the diamonds in the world, you wouldn't put them all on the market at the same time. You would maybe put 5% out every year and keep that demand high because the supply is low. But what I like about this guy is, obviously he tries to be an average Joe, but he's a really smart guy. He's a cum laude from Yale, so he's a, very smart guy. And but there's not many people that have traveled the world like he does, and he knows a lot of different countries. He knows a lot of different currencies, a lot of different cultures, and to me, I think that's what makes this guy a good investor. Is and he is a contrarian. So if everybody is on one side of the ship, he's willing to take the other side. Or, if like silver, for example, is down 60% all-time high. So, he thinks silver would be a good investment. He's also an agriculture guy, so he believes that agriculture has been in the dumps for years, and we're always going to need food and that kind of thing. So so I agree with a lot of things he says. A lot of things I may disagree with, such as I remember when I was in school, I remember Japan has taken over everything, like we're all going to be Japanese and stuff, and, that didn't happen, and most people think that China is going to overtake the U.S., and I just don't see it. I don't see it, The average person in China makes $10,000 a year. The average American is $60,000. So, the average person in China, their socioeconomic status has to raise sixfold to even come close. And if it wasn't for, China doing the COVID virus and, sending, a bazillion pounds of fentanyl over here, a lot of the young population in the U.S., they got a serious drug problem. And almost every family out there, it may not be you personally, but you got a sister or a brother or a cousin or aunt or a mother or a dad or somebody who has struggled with some kind of addiction one way or another. Now, some people, are alcoholics, and maybe they're functioning alcoholics. They can still hold a job. They can still pay the rent. They can still get to work and be a productive member of society, even though they have a severe addiction. Maybe it's hidden from the public and nobody can see it. But drugs destroy everyone around you. They destroy your life. They destroy your the family's life. They destroy everybody. To me, it's a very selfish disease, and all you live for is that next hit or that next bump or whatever your drug of choice is, and I'm not talking about weed or anything like that. I'm talking about the real hardcore drugs and that destroy. And it could even be opioids or something like that. And people start selling their houses because they need drugs and sell their car. They basically gamble away their kids and their grandkids' future. And maybe it's something like maybe it's just gambling. Gambling can destroy lives, families. One story I mentioned, I want to say it was forgive me if I don't know if it was the Vanderbilts or something that were one of the richest families in America, and 100 years later there wasn't a millionaire among them. This was 100 years ago, to have a family that was $300 million or so, that was a ton of money back then. And especially when you eat for 5 cents or something like that, or a couple pennies, and 100 years later there's not even a millionaire among them. I mean, that's pitiful. Then you take a family like the Rothschilds, who I don't particularly like banking, but they had a banking empire, but they created generational wealth for and grew their money. And one thing about Jim Rodgers is he invests in commodities a lot of times. And what is a commodity? Commodities like oil or gas, or it could be olive oil, or wheat, or whatever. Something that we can consume. And he just basically buys things cheap and then sells them when he thinks they're expensive. And it's a very simple strategy. And he makes his own decisions. So I mean, he doesn't go with the flow all the time. One thing I would caution is if all the me personally, if I had a lot of money, I'd probably throw some in Google and Microsoft and stuff like that, just because I believe that those companies are going to do good. But I also agree with his point that if those are the only ones that have been going up for the last 20 years, whenever there's a crash or a correction, the market falls 75%, those would be the ones that are going to take the biggest hit. So anyway, hopefully if you found this interesting, you guys will check out his interview. And I'm sorry for putting in all my biases and my personal opinions into it, but you guys make your own decision. You guys are smart, and you don't have to be a very bright person to be a very good investor. You could I can't remember Warren Buffett's quote on this, but but if you know how to hit the buy button and hit the sell button, that's pretty much all the intelligence you need to be a great investor. Buffett always says, be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. So, when you see blood in the streets, when you wake up and you see the stock dropping 50%, 60%, 70%, 80%, if you think it's undervalued, if you think that there's value there, that's the time you need to be buying. Don't necessarily wait for it to jump back 30% or 40% before you start buying it. Maybe it's tough because you don't want to catch a falling knife, and maybe you start a little position at, let's say it drops 50%. You maybe stick 5% in, and then it drops another 25%. You drop another 5%. And it drops another 15%. Then you maybe load up the truck and put 25% in, and it all depends on what you're comfortable with, and I like the analogy of Buffett talks about a McDonald's hamburger. Let's say you're willing to pay $1 for that McDonald's hamburger today, and then tomorrow you go to McDonald's and it's 50 cents. Does that mean that you're not going to buy a McDonald's hamburger because it's 50% off? Of course not. Instead of buying one, you might buy two, or you might buy 3 or 4. Maybe buy one for your sister or your brother or your mom or your dad or your neighbor who doesn't get out of the house much, or your grandma or somebody, and or maybe give it to the homeless person on the street. But to me, that is where opportunity opportunity is if you know what the value of a security is, and it's significantly less than what you believe it's worth, that I think that's a great investment. And when I first started, I was more into buying things that had no dividends. Nowadays, I kind of like the undervalued dividend payers better, because at least while you sit there a year or two and wait for things to turn around, or maybe it might be 5 years or 7 years before things turn around. But while you're sitting there waiting for things to turn around, at least you are getting a return on your money while you sit there and wait. Because it is very hard, for me anyway. Like BAK, for example. I was down 50%, I started buying at 12. The 52-week high when I bought it was 25 or something, 24. I basically thought I was buying it at half price. I thought I was just going to double my money and get out. And lo and behold, it dropped from 12 to 9 to 6 something. And I doubled down, and then I tripled down. And luckily for me that, when it was in the 6s and then it went to 9, I got out. I almost broke even. And that was the point where I, instead of 75% into the security, I was only 10%. So I reduced my overall exposure. But if I was wrong, I could have easily blown up my account. I could have easily wasted the last 4 or 5, 3 or 4 years investing with that one mistake. But if you think you're right, if you see a very good opportunity and you think you're right and everyone else is wrong, I think you got to go with your gut. I think you got to go with what you believe is right, regardless of what everyone else thinks. And when I started buying that company DAC when it was $3.50 or whatever, and and I was told every day that, oh, you're an idiot, you're stupid, you're just losing money, and it 30x'd. And it was my stupid fault for selling early, but at the time that was all the money I had. So when you're making $1,000 or so every day, and that's more money than you ever seen in your life. I took my profit and probably made $5 or $6 grand in a week and got out. And but also at that time, I did not think that I didn't think they were going to increase the money supply 40%. I didn't, see that coming. I just saw that the U.S. and around the world, we were over indebted, and I saw that as a bad thing, and we're still over indebted, and so I'm still pessimistic of the world economy as a whole, but that's not to say that you can't find value out there in pockets. And the reason why I am in a lot of overseas companies is because that's where I see the value at. If only 2% of the population of Brazil invests in the stock market, to me the stock market over there is very cheap compared to 50% of the U.S. stock market. People automatically buy stocks every week and every month just based on their 401k, where you're forced to take 4% or whatever out of your salary every check or every 2 weeks or whatever, and buy stock with it. And then if you do a match, or they have a match, and say the company does 4%, and then you do 4%, that's 8%, and that's just free money. So you'd be an idiot not to do that. And a lot of people don't even know what they're buying, but a lot of times they're buying these big companies, and so a lot of times these big companies keep getting bigger and bigger because 50% of the population is buying them every day or every time they get paid. And the same is true with a lot of rich people in other countries. They see the U.S. as a stable place to invest, and we have the world's currency, we have the world's best military, we were the world's financial leader of the world, and in some cases, California alone might be, if it was its own country, it'd probably be like the 5th or 6th biggest economy in the world, just California alone. Unlike Buffett, who just mainly invests in just U.S. companies, I try to be open-minded to other countries as well, even though they might have a higher geopolitical risk or maybe even a possible default. One of the things that Rodgers had mentioned in 2008 happened was the country of, I can't remember, I think it was Greenland. It was Greenland or Iceland. I want to say it was Greenland, went bankrupt. And then he said, Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. And then, or Bear Stearns and then Lehman Brothers. And then people started panicking. So I don't know what the trigger is going to be this time. Last time, one time it was the housing market, one time it was the financial markets, trouble with the banks, and the banks need to be bailed out. We already had problems with the banks last year where some went under. But I don't know. It could be World War III. It could be some cyber attack that takes out all our internet or infrastructure or electricity grid. Could be an oil crisis, or could be an iceberg that melts and cities are underwater. I don't know. I have no idea. Could be a volcano, could be flooding, earthquakes, who knows? I mean, there's all kinds of things that could happen. Could be an asteroid, could be a nuke. But the fact of the matter is that the global economy is in too much debt, and the global economy is not producing enough children around the world. A lot of countries have negative population growth, and when you're not having any children, basically what happens is you have a bunch of old people and you have no young people. And like our Social Security system, where you used to have 6 people working, well, the average black American in the U.S. used to live to be age 65, and somehow they picked the age 65 for Social Security, when the average black male died at 65, and that's the age they picked. So they basically said, hey, we're going to make Social Security 65, but you're never going to actually get any Social Security because you're going to be dead. But now people are living to be a lot older, and maybe 87, maybe 78, maybe 100 and some. So instead of 65, if you live to be 100 and you retire at 65, I mean, well, let's say you live to be 105. You got 40 years to live. So you got to have enough money to last you the last 40 years of your life. And I think I mentioned this before, but there's no word for retirement in Hebrew. So I don't think that was God's plan. But yeah, I mean, and the problem is with the young people today is they're all on drugs, so they can't. The younger population are not productive. They are destroying the wealth of their parents, or mooching off their parents, or mooching off their brother, or mooching off their sister, or and they can't support themselves, yet alone a spouse and a family. Now granted, there are some that are doing really well, but there's a lot that are being left behind. And we got to find a way to help those who are being left behind to at least, even if they don't make a lot of money, just to be productive and not just be a burden on society. Well, I should not have got in all these philosophical and political things, but I just kind of got carried away. But I mean, to me, just things look bleak. They look bad. I mean, you know. No one can afford a house nowadays. They're 7% interest rate. You know, if you got a $3,000 mortgage, I mean, $2,500 of it's just going to interest. Only maybe $500 is going towards the principal, and they're going to pay off. The bank's going to make sure they get a free house out of it, probably a house and a half for free. And then you can have your house. But if you miss one or two payments, they have no problems coming and taking your house from you, even though you already paid them a free house and a half a house, and probably bought them a new car as well. But you know, if you miss one or two payments, they got no problems coming and taking your house. You know, food is very expensive. Gas is expensive. I mean, a couple years ago it was $2, now it's $3.50 or $3.30 or whatever. That's a huge increase. That's probably 60% increase right there. And you know, if you drive an Uber, or if you're a truck driver, or something like that, you know, or you're a grocery store owner and you got to pay the truck drivers to deliver goods to your store, I mean, you're paying 60% more for gas. So that cost has to come somewhere. So that means, you know, you got to charge 60% more for your goods and services because the gas went up 60%. And then what happens if, you know, one of these missiles hits an oil refinery or something like that, and you know, 10% of the global oil supply gets shut off for a week or two, or they can't ship it where it needs to go, and prices soar. So, I mean, I have not been doing a lot of investing myself personally, just because of my personal situation where I've been bouncing back and forth from different jobs, and hopefully here shortly I will be getting back to stability and back to somewhere good and stable, and will not have any more breaks in income for a while, and I can get back to investing to where I was. But in the meantime, I would like to build a larger cash position, because with cash, even though you're not earning anything on that money today, if the market crashes 75% tomorrow, that gives me the cash to invest where everyone else is tapped out. Maybe they borrowed their last dollar and they can't borrow anymore, and they're already all in. So they don't have any reserves to take advantage of a market downturn when the market collapses 50, 60, 75%, and they can pick up shares for pennies on the dollar. But my personal beliefs is income, dividend investing, because even if a market downturn happens, let's say you buy a stock that's yielding 5 or 6% and it falls 50%, and well, now you're going to be buying shares and getting a 10% yield. Granted, they don't cut their dividend. But I do agree with Jim that silver, physical silver, dirty silver is probably a good thing to have. There's a verse somewhere in the Bible about, you won't be able to buy or sell, and you might have to trade at some point in the future and for a couple months. And, if you can have enough silver or gold to barter with, and if gold's $2,000 an ounce, a lot of people aren't going to be carrying bars of gold on them, so they're going to, if you need a loaf of bread, you're going to be trading with silver. Whether that's silver dollars or silver nickels or dimes or whatever. But, so I agree. I think having, 3 months of silver on hand is not a bad idea. I personally don't have that, but that would be, for me, it's hard to find. It's very hard to find. I think you can buy it on a website somewhere, but I think for me, my first goal would be to build up my cash position a little bit and make sure I have 3 to 6 months income in cash in case I lose my job or whatever, and of course max my Roth IRA out, and then maybe of course pay off any debts or that kind of thing, and then maybe start buying a little bit of physical silver. But anyway, I've rambled on enough. Thanks for listening.